Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Half Watt Podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Today I am sitting with one of my workmates from OHSU, Mr. Alan Rader.
Hello there. Thanks
Hello.
for having me.
I'm super stoked to have you here.
It's nice to be here. Beautiful studio.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish I could say I put it together and that I did all the nice decorations in here. That'd be a bald-faced lie. My man behind the window here did all this and his partner. It's really cool. Isn't it?
It is. It's a lot of what looks to me to be high-tech sound.
It is really high-tech.
And nice insulation on the walls. Well done.
If we did it at my house, it'd be dogs barking, people throwing dishes, and upsetness, and a rabbit always scratching at something. So anyway, so Alan, I met you when you were a student of mine a couple of years ago.
Yes, sir.
Right, and I believe I owe you my going back to OHSU to you chasing me down, and I want to thank you publicly.
Oh, sure. No problem.
It was a good deal.
I'm happy to see you there. I've wondered if the jokes in class that you used to tell have changed, or
No.
how they've changed.
No, same thing. Same damn jokes.
Okay. About OHSU. We have nothing but love for it.
We have nothing but love for the Hill. Matter of fact, it's one of those places where it's weird because I feel really comfortable there, and I've all the places I've ever been, all the places I've ever worked. That's the only place when I walked back in the EMC I felt as comfortable now as I did.
Sure.
15 plus years ago.
Yeah.
So tell me about yourself. So you're from Texas.
That's right.
And you're proud of this. No.
Actually, I was born in Spokane. My dad was an Air Force SEER instructor at Fairchild.
I didn't
Air
know you
Force
did
Base.
SEER.
Yep. He's a hardcore guy. He's serious about it.
Yeah.
Sit down with him. He'll tell you all his cool stories.
I did not know you did SEER.
He was a severe SEER survival instructor.
Yeah.
And so when he got out of that, we moved to California for a few years. And then in third grade, that's when we moved to Texas.
No kidding.
Yep. And I lived there until I was about 22, and then moved to Portland, Oregon. And that's when I got into the facilities world, where I kind of eventually found my way into the LEA program.
Right, because you worked at PSU, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there's a lot of folks, sir.
That's the Texan. That's the Texas coming out. Yep.
I wasn't hatched.
If I didn't say it, you'd hit me with a ruler right on the wrist.
No, I would not. I wasn't hatched, and I had parents, as we used to say in the Navy. Whenever we said that in the Navy, or if you killed anybody who was listed as sir, they'd say, "I had parents. Don't you call me." Especially the chiefs. Man, the chiefs would go off on you. "Don't you call me sir? I had parents. Damn you."
Mm-hmm.
So you were working at PSU, and I knew a lot of folks that had gone from PSU to OHSU. I mean, Ron Church and Aaliyah. I think because she had worked at PSU, Aaliyah.
Yep.
Right. And
yes.
Someone else.
There's
Gosh.
a bunch. The locksmith Howard was
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Fun guys.
Yep. And our fire alarm guy there was a high voltage fella named Kent Nix, and
I remember him.
Yeah.
He's super good.
Yep.
He was super good.
Yep. I wouldn't say introduced me into the trade. There's one funny story where maybe my first engagement in the fire alarm industry was when I was a nighttime maintenance man in the Smith Memorial Student Union Center at Portland State University while I was going to school there. And there was a fire alarm, fire trucks rolled. They got there. I had no idea what was going on. They knew to check the annunciator. I did not. And told me where the fire alarm originated. So we went up to this ballroom where the kids were having a party, to dance something, and there was a beam detector running across the ceiling, and a bunch of balloons had gotten up there, blocked the beam. Yeah. So my fix was to get a 1/2-inch piece of PVC, a bunch of earplugs, and finishing nails. And after they all,
really?
and I just made like a dart gun and popped all the balloons, and we reset the fire alarm, got out to clear. That was fun.
Well played.
Thank you.
Well played, man. Damn. So you worked at PSU and got your degree there.
That's right.
And you have a master's, correct?
Yep.
Wow.
That was a long time ago.
It impresses the hell out of me. It really does. When you told me that in school, I went, "You have a master's?" And it's in like lit too, isn't it?
Yep.
Something you use every single day.
That's funny. It's not the sort of thing you use like a medical degree. You know, it just sits in the back of your mind, and it made me a more organized thinker, I guess. Yeah. Especially if I'm writing. That's about it. But you're right to laugh. I don't use it in any practical kind of way.
Well, but you do write.
Yep.
And you're an avid reader too, I know.
Yes.
And you're really, really well versed.
Yeah.
I mean, you're really well versed. So
well,
you got to give yourself credit for that, dude.
Alrighty.
I'd say.
There's a lot of folks who read a lot, you know. You don't need a master's degree to do that. I had a neighbor who lived across the street from me, an old convict. I won't say his name to protect his identity, but he was probably the most well-read person I ever met. He'd spent like 40 some odd years in jail. And,
oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and all he did when he was there was read. And once he finally got out and he lived across the street from me, he would just sit there and lecture me for hours and hours and hours. Much worse than a certain someone we know whose name may sound like Bobbin Mendicott. But the lectures were real interesting. And, I think of folks like him as the real avid readers.
That's funny, though.
And you read a lot of history.
I read a lot, yeah. And I stumbled into Divergent. And I've just started, I've almost like 3/4 of the way through that. And I don't know if you know that storyline at all.
Very little. My gal was watching isn't there a TV show?
There's got to be a series on it because there's a bunch of actors and actresses that have done it. It didn't get really high reviews. The book is phenomenal. It's really good.
Cool. I know I sold a few copies of it when I dabbled in book selling once upon a time. There was a sale at Powell's and I went and grabbed up a bunch of copies.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
I kind of I read that and I'm reading To Kill a Mockingbird because I never had to read that in school. So at the same time, I'm doing.
Cool.
In the morning I'll do one, and in the evening I'll do the other.
That's can't share either of those experiences with you. Haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird or Divergent, but something I've been reading lately is I've been rereading a favorite of mine called Blood Meridian by author named Cormac McCarthy. He's about to come out with a new book called The Passenger next month, and so I've been just jumping back into his books.
So you've read this before? You've read
Blood Meridian? Yep. It's probably on my top 5 favorites list. Really good Western cowboys and Native American Indians and the Mexican government.
Okay.
Set in about 1890 or thereabout.
Okay. Huh. I'm just writing.
Violent, though. I should warn your audience.
I like violence.
But realistic and honest about the violence.
Yeah. Well, and I've read enough books on World War II and Vietnam and Korea, and I've just finished one that kind of skirts into World War I, but not for whatever reason. I was never into World War I. I was always into II, and when you look back at when I was born, II ended 19 years, before I was born, and that's why there were so many World War II vets that I grew up with that wouldn't really talk about it, but it was like the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Wow.
And because I grew up in the Elks Lodge in El Cajon, and everybody was a vet. Everybody had served in the war to some capacity. Every once in a while, it was the Navy guys who would talk about their experiences. None of the Army guys would talk about it. The Navy guys would talk about it.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and which probably is why I joined, because I could just see myself in a tin can. And it was never like, oh, this was bad because we got hit by kamikazes. It was like, yeah, we'd pull all these practical jokes on all these other sailors and stuff. And some of the stories that I heard were interesting because most of my family were Marines. I wasn't joining the Corps, so no.
Wow. I never thought about that, but folks from your generation grew up with World War II vets.
A lot of them.
Yeah, whereas I talked to people who went to Vietnam, Korea, and all that, but they're also old now, the World War II vets. I can't think of the one that I've ever met. Yeah.
It's kind of sad because what my experience was with them was, they would allude to them being in it, especially the ground pounders, the Marines and the Army. And it was my uncle on my grandmother's brother, would be my granduncle, during a poker game. Now, we were avid poker players, and during a family poker game, who didn't come across the table, but he certainly could have, with because I kind of got sort of patriotic on him. And he looked at me and he goes, I'll never forget it. He looked me right in the eye and goes, Mikey, and he was really loud. He goes, Mikey, when 80% of everybody you went to boot camp with and knew is dead, everybody I knew was dead by the time we were done. And he goes, that will change you. Don't wrap yourself in some flag in front of me. And I said, I didn't mean to come off that way. And he goes, bullshit. And then he just went into it. And I hit a tripwire there. I didn't know. And my uncle, who was also at the table, had served in Vietnam, didn't say a word. Like they just stood back and he let him kind of go off. And he was a very good, very outspoken, gregarious person. And wound up dying of asbestosis. He was a pipe fitter when he came back, steam fitter actually, and died of asbestosis in a terrible way. But his experiences and my grandmother's tale of what happened was when he got drafted and went into he didn't get in the Marines. You volunteered, but he volunteered, went in the Marines because he knew he was going to get drafted. And I don't know the battles he fought in, but I know he did 3 of them. And 3 island campaigns, and she said when he came back, he was not the same.
I believe it. I've heard some of those stories from folks my age, not obviously the same war, but Afghanistan, Iraq, and they're not pretty. That will change you. I believe it.
I think it changes all of them.
Yeah.
I think they come back with, he came back with PTSD, but it was not, that generation dealt with it totally different than what they did in Vietnam, and it's totally different than the way these guys are dealing with it now.
At the risk of alienating your audience, I'll say, circling back to the LEA field, one of these stories I heard from an old high school buddy I ran into once here in Portland at the place where we work. Won't say his name, but oh man, there had been someone's eye, I won't go into a whole lot of detail, that had opened an eye scanner. I'm assuming there'd be some low voltage tech involved in that, but I don't want to give any more information about it. He's out there. He might hear it. So
it's a different,
really bizarre story. I'll tell you about it later.
I would like to hear that, because what happens a lot is that these guys, they're coming back and they're trying to deal with what they've seen, and it's just, and what they've experienced, and the smells and the stuff like that. And everybody who, when I'm teaching, if I know that you're a combat vet, I'll just ask how you're doing, and that's it. Like I never ask anybody like what you saw, what you did. That's not my forte. It's not my business. But I will ask how you're doing, to make sure that if you needed to get off your chest. And I've had a couple of vets sit down and explain what they saw and what it was like. When I was in the Navy, we had a sister ship we used to do a lot of ops with on my first ship, and one of those guys there was in the Army in Vietnam, and then he moved over to the Navy. And there was a lot of the guys that did that. I knew at least 3 or 4 that had gone from being either ground pounders or in Army signals intelligence work, and then had moved into the Navy and to do electronic warfare, which was that kind of thing. And man, they were almost all 3 of them were very open about what had happened, what they'd seen, what they'd done. But 2 of them really had not served in necessarily combat. Well, I take that back. 2 had served in combat, and one had not. And the one that stands out the most was one of my instructors in Pensacola, Florida, when I was going through there. And he flat pulled me out of class and said, if you don't pay attention to what I'm teaching you here, there's going to be Mike Brooks all over the wall. Just like that. And he was not screwing around. And I was like, well, okay.
Pay attention.
And you know what I bought him? A bottle of Johnny Walker Red. And that made up for the faux pas it cost.
The stakes are so high in the military, you have to focus and pay attention.
Sometimes you gotta help a brother out. So that's exactly what I did. And it worked. I mean, we became friends, and yeah, he was a really good guy. But his experiences there, and he was very upfront about what he saw, and it definitely affected him. You know, he was on a what they call a snipe kill team, so it was pretty rough. So so you worked at PSU, you came up to OHSU, but you didn't work in low voltage at OHSU. You were still doing facilities.
Right. I applied for a position in the facilities department, and I was doing the same thing I'd done at Portland State, which was just being a maintenance man, entry level, and did that for a few years at the hospital. It was a public service employer, and I was trying to get my student loans paid off with a PSLF program. And so I'm like, man, if I have to stick around here for 10 years, I want to find something different to do besides unclogging toilets and patient restrooms.
And I hear a lot of those over the radio, so I could see that being a major drawback.
Yeah, so
leaky sinks and toilets not working right.
And some of them can be pretty nasty, or ceiling leaks, ceiling tiles.
Or the combination of both. Joy.
Yep. Yeah, that can happen if you have a clogged drain and it backs up into the toilet and the sink and the shower and every other hole in the room.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, our boss, who at the time was the coordinator of the fire team, hired me, and I started out there in fire systems, and just did inspections for first few years before I entered the LEA apprenticeship program and started getting into the electronic side, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it and still enjoy it. I think of it as professional tinkering. You know, I'm a professional tinkerer.
You're good at it too.
Thank you.
Because you picked up, well, think about this. You picked up fire smoke dampers, which is in itself, understanding that and how they work, all the pneumatics and the electrical fire smoke dampers. You do all that, or have done that. Right now you're coordinating electrical shutdowns now, so that kind of introduced you to high voltage. I mean, you're not working on it, but you're at least familiar with it and coordinating all those contractors doing that.
Yeah,
and you're good at that.
I get by.
Clearly.
Yep. You know, the stakes are high in a hospital if you're shutting off the entire equipment branch and like half of a 16-story building. You have to have a plan, go at it, and think about it a lot, and a lot of moving pieces.
Well, you're pretty much a one-man show that I've seen, and you do a pretty good job of it.
Thanks. I'm not a one-man show. There are so many folks that make it so much easier. The contractors that I work with. Dyna, they're true. Great. Yeah, the facilities guys, the support.
The Dyna guys are fantastic.
There's a lot of support from the senior techs in the facilities department. They're on the ball. They know their equipment really well. And all I do is say, hey, this will turn off, this, and that will turn off. You know, when we...
Well, it still takes a lot of research. When you looked up those two circuits for me today and had information like how they could reroute this stuff. Yeah, and which contractor to use and when, you know, I mean, and you did that in like less than 2 hours. So
yeah,
I like that kind of stuff. It helps, you know,
yeah.
As I'm sitting there pulling reports all day, which is what I wound up doing. Sometimes it's not glorious. Sometimes it's just data extraction and manipulation, you know.
Stepping out from behind my desk to do some fire alarm work, though. I've got some installs that I'm going to get to work on.
Nice.
I convinced my boss that, hey, I need to do some real hands-on labor once in a while. So there's a few devices. I'm going to try to get better at bending conduit and all that kind of fun stuff.
Well, that one in the South Hospital is all yours. It's all yours, buddy.
Dude.
And that'll have quite a bit of conduit for us. So I want to see how that goes. You don't think?
That's very little conduit. I looked at it today.
I'll find
very,
more
like
then.
maybe 1 or 2 bins, and it's going to be an easy one.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like it though. I really do, and I've got a lot of those to do. I mean, we've got a dozen of them to tie in. So what he's doing is, as Alan's going to start working for us again, 1/5 of the time, to keep his skill sets up. And we've got valves that are added to the sprinkler system that you would open up to flow water out. And they're anybody who does sprinkler work would know what we're talking about. So it's called an FTC bypass. And we've added all these valves. We want them all monitored. So we're going to go back through and monitor all the valves. And so,
you want to know if someone goes down there and turns the wrong valve, or some saboteur decides he wants to mess up OHSU.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a valve, and the insurance company requires we monitor them all.
Sure.
Monitor and lock them.
Yep,
and so, and that's pretty critical to keep a hospital open, and that's what I'm all about. So.
For sure.
I like it. I like the fact that you're coming back. So you basically have been in facilities or an electrical person for how many years now? Like 15?
A bit longer. I grew up roping houses and stuff with my grandpa.
Oh, really?
And my dad, who, when he got out of the military, became an electrician.
Oh, I didn't know that. So he does electrical work now too.
Yep, he works in South Texas, wiring up firecracker stands and big firecracker storage warehouses, and
that's all he does, right? I mean,
yeah, he's pushing 70, but he's got the work ethic of a vigorous 20-year-old person, and running around, climbing ladders, pulling cables.
And he's almost 70.
Yep. I'm going to see him in a few days. I'm flying to Texas. He may knock me on the head when he finds out. I don't know exactly how old he is. He was born in 63. What's that make him?
Well, 63 would make him a year older than me.
Okay.
That'd make him 59.
59. I'm pushing 70. So, yeah. Don't ask me to do any of your load calcs, folks.
Scary math skills. However, in literature, you got that shit down.
Right.
But no, that's I'm glad he's up moving. I mean, that really is critical for me. And I do my bike riding and all that stuff to keep my body limber, and it pays out. It really does. And we were talking about like when I should retire and all that stuff, and part of me is like, well, I would love to spend that time doing horse stuff and hanging out with the wife, but I enjoy it. I enjoy being involved. I enjoy doing.
Yeah, it's
work.
fun.
It keeps my brain engaged. So with with all the time that you've spent doing all this stuff, and you went through the whole program, and didn't you blow the test away too when you took it?
No, I passed it. I don't remember my exact score. It was like a high B or something, but I didn't blow it away. Nope.
Didn't?
No.
I thought you did. Wow.
No, I did well. I think a high B is acceptable. I have my license. That's
very
fine.
much so. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny though that if all of meeting you, being my student, and now working beside you, and then you introduced me to the ITG folks, so we just sat and had lunch with them, which I'm hoping to abscond with both of them. Get them up here and get them in front of the mic.
Yeah, I interface with a lot of those folks now. When you're turning off an electrical panel, there's all kinds of stuff that gets AC power from it, from ITG to clinical tech and access controls, fire alarm, all the LEA trades. And so I put my eyes on all that stuff now, and I don't have a very in-depth knowledge of much of it, but I have a wide breadth of it and very general awareness of it. And I've poked my way around a lot of those control panels and have a rudimentary but sufficient level of knowledge of them to do what I do, which is figure out what will happen when those things turn off and what do we need to do in the hospital to protect folks
you have to
from
put
that.
out like impact notices and all that.
Yeah, or
tell people what an impact notice is, how that works.
All right. So if we have an electrical contractor that's where you're working up in an electrical panel, either a small branch panel or a big distribution panel that shuts off a big section of the building. And part of electrical mitigation is just making folks aware of what's going to happen. And that's what we call just those documents you mentioned, the notifications. Another part of it is figuring out the industry term that I hear thrown around, backfeed, what to refeed electrically. When you turn off its primary power source, you get an extension cord, cut off one end, and plug it into the wall and make a pigtail. And
oh, really?
Just temp it in for like an hour or something. Obviously you can't do that for some permanent fix. It's a big no-no. But if you're just doing like a 30-minute shutdown or something, it's acceptable if it keeps people safe.
Wow.
So figuring out which of those items you got to take care of, or bigger things that need, more volts, like fans and what have you, that take 480 volts, 3-phase devices, motors. So just got to, everything runs on electricity. So just a very broad awareness of all the different devices in the building, from a toaster oven to an X-ray machine or an MRI or what have you, and
pretty
scheduling.
Serious stuff when it goes down too. I
Yeah,
I've only been involved in one of your shutdowns, and that was the one that I was on the 3rd floor at South, and that was the cafeteria area.
Oh, sure.
And you had all those lights out there, and I didn't think about all that, because
I remember that.
Your E-light, some of your E-light comes on, but then there's other areas where there was no lighting, like in the elevator cabs. You had all those stuff set out so that people had, lighting in case things went sideways, because you got to be prepared for things if they don't go right.
Yeah, that was actually the tail end of that little cut over, where we finished on the 3rd floor, but we started on the 15th.
Wow.
Shutting off life safety panels from there all the way down to 3, cutting over the loads so that the panels could be reworked. Yeah. I say it's the electrical contractors doing it, but I'm not there with a wrench in my hands or anything. I'm just behind the scenes. But I end up thinking of myself as a part of their team. There's camaraderie there, and I enjoy it.
It's a good group of guys to work with, really, and gals.
Yep.
I should be not gender specific.
And in line with the theme of the show, the Half Watt podcast. These are all high voltage people I'm working with. I don't do a lot of hands-on LEA stuff anymore, although I would really like to. They're very nice to me. There's no attitude about me being a half watt. I wait for those jokes to come around. I've got so many comebacks prepared for them, but I just never get. Today I had the first half watt joke directed at me. Yeah.
Which was?
I was working in a lab. We were cleaning up, and we had a pretty big shutdown in a big lab where they do a bunch of testing, and we shut off the whole critical branch. Well, not the whole, like maybe a sizable chunk of the critical branch on that floor, and that just means the red plugs and some of the emergency lighting that's picked up by the generators. And, so we'd run a bunch of back feeds and stuff. And we were cleaning that up, and I was wrapping up cords and tying them up with zip ties. And this high voltage person sees me bust out a pair of he calls them half watt scissors. I break them out to cut a zip tie. And he says, "Look at you little half watt. Those are half watt scissors." When I said, finally, an electrician calls me half watt.
The first half watt joke that came out.
Yeah.
It's a much different crew of folks up here now than there were. Like when I was here before, and Dinah was becoming the big, the big catfish in a bowl up there for us. it was, you know, it was a whole different supervisor, superintendent, and all that stuff. Well, now a lot of the guys who had just turned out or were apprentices are now running the show.
Mm-hmm.
And so TR and Dave, all those guys, you know, were fresh into the trade when I first met them, and now you can see where they've progressed in, you know, and how well they run things, because it's nothing like it was. I mean, and they were a good crew then. I mean, it was really fun to work with them then. But there was a couple of guys that would really ham it up when I was out. You probably never met them, but they were. Rick was one of them. He was just a riot, man. He'd see you coming, and when we'd work with these guys, my big joke was, all you have to know is 3 colors, right? White, black,
white.
and green, and everything's simple. And yeah, and you used that joke the other day at lunch, and I hadn't heard that in so long. You know, like.
That's true if you're, you know, depending on what crew you're working with. If they're hooking up a 3-phase motor mic, there are 5
there
colors.
Might be other colors.
Or wait, 3 hots, a neutral, and a ground. Yes, 5 colors. 5 colors. So you're gonna have.
I used to make fun of them until they were doing the South Hospital expansion, and they added those 12,000 volt generators down there, and had to set those transformers up. And I watched those guys work out some of the issues in the math, and I was just like, wow.
Yeah, jokes aside, there's a bit more to it.
Oh my God,
it's impressive.
Especially when it comes to transformers and power factors and things like that, where you watch these guys sit back and start doing the mathematics and how they're calculating that. Even the high voltage crew, you know, our electricians, our in-house electricians. When I was first there. There were a couple of you know, besides the Burnham brothers and some other folks that were there. There was a guy named Paul Templin who was there, who you probably didn't meet. Super smart guy, super smart electrician. Drove people crackers, but he was super bright. And, you could ask him a theory question on whatever, and power factor or motors or 3 phases, and he would turn right around and teach it to you and make sure you understood everything was going on. And it's the guy who aced, when he got his ham license, he aced the extra, you know, test, which very few of us have done. So it was pretty damn impressive from a guy who went from, you know, never really touching the radio to acing the extra exam. So I was proud of him.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm about to take the NICET too.
Good.
Yeah.
Good on you. You'll do well, I think.
Thanks. I think so.
The big thing about NICET is timing, right?
Yep.
And you know how to take tests, so as long as you have your strategy, it'd be good.
I feel like the IEC program prepped me good for these kinds of exams. Gilson did a good job of that. We got in. I think he's been a guest on this show, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. First day of class throws us a test that you know, I didn't fail. I think I got a 70 or something, but I'm sure I might as well have failed. It was pure luck I didn't. But he throws us a test the first few rounds that, unless you're a pretty big egghead, you're probably going to bomb, just to, I think, shake you up a little, get your head in the game. Like, look, you gotta focus and buckle down to pass this. If you're serious about getting your license, as I think the students out there should be, start digging into your code books ahead of time.
Oh yeah, the earlier you can get in the code books, the better. Honestly,
the
more familiar you are with the NEC, the better you're going to be. Unfamiliarity with the book is a killer on tests. Yeah, it just is. I do Stump the Chump on a couple of weeks in specialized controls.
I remember.
And that is specifically stolen from the Navy.
Oh.
I took it. Well, you know what we did was you had, when you're out to sea, you know, ship between ships, we talked back and forth on circuits that were secure and allegedly. But anyway, now they were, you know, you could have up to secret level conversation on a radio that had encryption. And so every night the ships and company, whenever they had these exercises, you would grab a publication and ask each other questions. And you would ask all the ships and company the same question. And inevitably there would be the same ship would come up with the answer first. Like if you're out there with the Gridley going to answer the question before anybody can get out there.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a hot shot on the Gridley or a hot crew. That's your competition.
Mm-hmm.
So Stump the Chump was designed that once you threw these questions out, and they could be from anywhere in the book, or whatever book you chose. And so we would choose like obscure naval warfare publications. My favorite was optical or tactical deception. It was NWP 34, and naval warfare publication. And if you hadn't boned up on tactical deception, I was going to smoke you with the book, because that's what I read. I really got into that, and then eventually went to a command where that's what we did.
Did you say tactical deception?
Tactical deception.
Oh, that sounds fun. Is that
BS
like counter
on a
intel?
tactical level? No, it was understanding the dynamics of deceiving somebody when you're out to sea. What that entails, and an observation. And so the obviously the book was classified. I can't talk about it too much, but that's what the whole purpose of it was.
I've seen Star Trek though. You can make a false radar target.
Bingo.
Okay.
Or however you did that. However, when we really did it, we really actually used the tools that we had and the knowledge that we had. It worked.
Cool.
I mean, it did, but a lot of it is to know your enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Is to know who it is that is targeting you, and how, and then you feed them what they expect to see.
Mm-hmm.
So they're targeting you, and you're giving all of the impressions that that's exactly what they expect to see, so they don't think anything else. And of course, we were geared towards that. So you practice that on every ship. Every ship was capable of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got to my last command, that was our specialty. So then we had, not only did you have all these arrows in your quiver, now we've given you extra special tools to be even better at it. And when we deployed them and used them, they were really effective. I mean, our favorite was we went against a Los Angeles class submarine on one of the ships I was on, and they shot us instead of who they were going for. And I mean, they were accurate. They sunk us. I mean, every time I've done an exercise with a submarine, I've unfortunately lost. Matter of fact, the Blueback sitting here in Portland at OMSI sunk 2 of the boats I was on in exercises, flat out. One of them, they were laughing so hard they couldn't even talk on the damn radio when they surfaced. They were laughing so hard. They were laughing at us so hard that the operators on the UHF circuit could hardly even speak because it was such a slam dunk.
Yeah, I've never been involved in a situation like that, but just thinking about it generally, they seem to have the pretty good advantage.
Yeah.
You can't see them.
Well, yeah.
And there's a lot of false targets underwater,
but
right?
we had all the right equipment. We just were. Some of the ships I was on some of the ships I was on, the especially in the 80s when they were building a huge fleet, which is what their goal was to build a 600 ship navy.
Mm-hmm.
There was some lack of training in certain disciplines, and that's what was getting us, was just not having the right people in the right place at the right time. And when the Navy subsequently started to narrow down and focus on making sure that everybody got their enlisted surface warfare quals, which is the pins you wear, and making sure that the quality of the sailor went up, a lot of that, they took care of a lot of those issues when they narrowed down and became focused. But at the time I was in, it was not that. It was this big expansion, and they were going to make this big, huge fleet, a bunch of ships. And it's just like anything else. If you read books on World War II, you realize that not every tin can sailor knew what the hell they were doing, and there's a lot of you make a lot of mistakes trying to figure stuff out. But the Blueback, they don't make mistakes. These damn submariners, they don't make mistakes like that. Like, these guys are so highly qualified and so highly trained when they go out. If you don't make the cut, you don't stay on the boat. Well, that's not the way it is on the surface fleet. If you don't make the cut, you can go paint or do something that's not in a warfare area, but we're going to try to put the people who are good at what they do, in there. Anyway, we had an LA class come after us and sunk us in an exercise, and they were supposed to have sunk another ship. It was 125 miles away. And when that guy figured it out, when the captain figured it out, he said, "That's bat squeeze. There's no way I shot the wrong boat." And we said, "You absolutely did." By that point, we'd already painted a submarine on the side of our doors that was broken in two, and we put a knot symbol on it. And we could leave our door open on our equipment so they could see it.
Well done. Well played.
Yeah. As a no submarine warning. But if it was a real torpedo, I wouldn't be here, or two torpedoes, I wouldn't be here to tell you the story. So, I'd have been sunk, and then they had figured it out. But it was it was an exercise, and that's what that's all about. So we've kind of touched on a couple of things. You've got obviously a pretty good background. You've worked in a lot of different, fields in facilities. You sort of drifted into electrical work and found your niche. Where do you go from here? What do you do? Do you stay happy and content, or are you gonna? I know you're gonna get your NICET 2, and that'll be a nice, arrow on your quiver. But what happens? Where does Alan go from there? Do you go into management?
I don't think so. I don't want to be a manager, and
I can understand why.
I really just like being out in the field and doing hands-on work. I think I'd like to get into programming. That'd be fun. But really, I just like to load a cart up with hand tools and
go install.
Out and install and pull cables, bend conduits, and put devices in boxes. And,
well, the last one I worked on, the last project that you installed, was flawless.
Oh, that was fun.
It was flawless. It really was.
I learned, I learned all that from just doing little at-home tinkering jobs, and I made for Valentine's Day an automated home plant watering system for my gal.
And how's that work?
Oh, pretty good. I could bust out my phone right now if I wanted and water the house plants.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And then you built this thing from scratch. I mean,
there's a cool store up in far northeast Portland somewhere called Surplus Gizmos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. By the way, if you're interested in purchasing ad times on Half Watt Podcast, please.
Yeah, no kidding.
Please contact Mike. I'm kidding. Yes, I went to Surplus Gizmos. Gizmos bought a 24-volt DC pump and some. What else? Let me think. I got a remote control relay. Actually, not remote control. Excuse me, a Wi-Fi switching relay, and that just connects to your home Wi-Fi router, and you can access that from any 3, 4, 5G device, and take a look at your switches, turn them on and off, or set them on timers and stuff. And so, got that pump and a power supply that I ordered from some shop in Connecticut, and some piping, some plastic tubing, and just went to work while she was visiting Mom. And when she came back, her plants would water themselves.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's cool.
Yep. And my truck out there has some fun.
Yeah, you would put some stuff on your truck then you went camping out in the middle of BFE, and it worked, right?
So many of your listeners are probably rolling their eyes at this because they do this every day professionally. But for me, it's become a hobby, because I coordinate electrical work. So now the LEA trade is something I do on the side for fun. And so I set my truck up with a bunch of low voltage tech, a solar panel, and a charger, battery, fuse block. So now I, have a refrigerator in there and a fan for my dog, a few other devices. I'm thinking about adding an inverter so I can have 120 volt devices. Don't have much of a need for them though, to be honest.
Still.
Yeah. So I put a meter on it recently. That was fun. Had to
like
shunt
a
it.
digital meter, so you could see
Yeah, a
what the-
digital meter, so I can monitor the performance of the system. And that was a fun little project. Yeah.
When you look at if you go back and look at ham radio, for example, and when I was a kid and I was a CBer, everybody on my block that was a ham radio guy was like, "Oh, you got to get out of CBs, you got to get into ham radio." And they were putting together tubes and hybrid tube and solid state stuff, and I would go see some of this equipment that they were working on and be pretty fascinated with it. But I couldn't really, like, I couldn't stop my world long enough to be of any value, you know. And when I joined the military, and then they started teaching me electronics, I thought, man, I'll start building kits and doing stuff like that. And I just wound up never really getting a chance to do that until I had gotten out of the military. And then came up and I was working for Bill when he was there, Batayev. And he suggested I get my ham radio license prior to the Y2K. And then bought all this equipment and said, well, install it. So all the antennas on the roof I installed or helped install, and, you know, all that BS.
Sure.
And then I started tinkering. So I didn't really start tinkering with like electronics, like tinkering with it on my own level until probably 2000, 1999 or 2000, in that era. I had kind of messed with it, but nothing like that. Then I really got into it. But now the level of tinkering by folks is they'll buy a Raspberry Pi,
Sure.
and then they'll program that Pi to do a bunch of things. Where, you know, the level I was at was like
That's where I'm at.
yeah,
Yeah,
like the basic stuff, you know.
Switch turns on.
That's right,
Pump.
exactly.
Water flow to plant.
There you go.
Meanwhile, you've got these people with their Arduinos
Yeah.
that are putting, like, they're breaking apart those vacuum cleaners, taking the sensors out, putting them on drones that will fly around and shoot darts at army ants.
I mean, they're really working at a level that I still look at and I go, holy cow, man! Like, did you see the one where they took the vacuum cleaner? You know, the little vacuum cleaner, the Roomba.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
this
that's what
kid
I'm talking about.
reprogrammed it so every time I'd bump into something, it'd swear.
That's great.
It cost.
And he's probably like 8,
Yeah, he's like 12 or something.
doing cooler stuff than
So
I'm
they're,
doing.
you know, they're into the programming, and they're into the guy I work with, the IT guy I worked with at PSI this guy was in the Marine Corps as a tanker. He's like 6'3". I don't know how he fit in a tank, but he's super smart. And so he put together, he'll piece together stuff for a drone, and he's telling me what he's doing, and I can follow it. But I, for the life of me, don't have any of the damn skill sets it takes to do that. And I was absolutely amazed at the stuff this guy could build. And he had kids and all these things. So he was doing this and able to build these things, these high-tech gizmos, really high-tech gizmos. And it was nothing for him. Like, it was just nothing. You know, plus he's an IT guy, so he's constantly, you know, working on computers.
He's like Goodwill Hunting doing
kind of. Yeah.
organic chemistry or something.
It was amazing to me. And still to this day, like, when I go and play ham radio on my own, you know, it's really like I'll figure out a technology, I'll get it to work, and then it's like scratch the itch. And then I'm sort of off to the next technology, and I just get enough of it down to be completely dangerous with it, and then I'm off to do something else. And I think as time frees up in my life, I would like to be able to actually see something through to completion, and, you know, like, maybe because I've built kits and put stuff together, but I would like to be able to kind of design better and not be so limited, you know.
Yeah, I don't think you mentioned your goals, and it reminds me I didn't answer your question earlier. What's next for me?
Yeah, what is next for you?
I don't know. A lot of, you know, what happens to us in life just happens. Like, I kind of just wandered into this trade. It's not what I had in mind. I wasn't going to even work in facilities.
What were you gonna do?
I was going to be a teacher, like a lit teacher. In retrospect, I'm glad I didn't become one. I like what I do now. I know a lot of folks who are teachers, and of course money is not the most important thing, but I'll say that working in this trade, I make a lot more than, not all of them, but most of them.
Yeah.
And
Which you don't think would be the case.
Yeah.
You think with all that training and all those degrees and all
Sure.
those skill sets that they would be paid,
Yeah, you would think
more.
that. But as far as what's next for me, certainly not management. I would like to get back into doing more hands-on stuff. Programming, sure. That's a big part of it. And like you mentioned with the kids tinkering with Raspberry Pi and that's all digital programming. And it's a huge part of it, a very important piece that is missing from my skill set, something I'd like to pick up just for my own self-improvement in that trade. I think that is what would be next.
Well, I think when you get, like, when you're ready to do, like when you get these valves wired in, I'm going to just hand you the computer. And
I've read programming. I can diagnose programming problems, and
you've got a very logical brain for that.
Yeah,
and that helps.
Sure, I've come across some fun ones where, for instance, every time the network would reinitialize at work, the fire alarm network, certain devices out in the field would just turn on. These relays just turning on every time the network reinitializes. I'm like, WTF, these are emergency control functions. They're not supposed to be turning on.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I'll bust out this laptop. I won't repeat our top secret code word to access the old device that we all know. Look up the programming, the custom controls there. They're not super hard to read or understand. If this condition happens and this and this and this and this are not on, then this happens. Right. And so you can follow all that, and eventually you realize there's a bug in node 90 or whatever, an and instead of an or vice versa. And but what I'd like to be able to do is that level of programming to generate that whole script. That'd be fun, and it's important. So I'd like to be a tech again, sure, and do that. That's what would be next for me.
I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot. Because in teaching Chris, how to write code, and I'm trying to remember code, because I've written code in other panels, and I've obviously written it in Simplex before, but coming back to the new, like the ESs and the ESs and the U's are, man, those things have got, that's a lot. It's a lot nicer to write code in those than it was the old blue screen ones.
I bet, I've seen code in both of those.
It's pretty similar.
Yeah. I agree that it seems a lot easier in the new, it's easier to access the am I using the right term, the script? I don't know.
The custom control.
Sure. All that. And, Yep.
Well, we set that test. We have a test bench set up in that one of our shops, and I gave Chris the laptop.
Yeah, that was the first thing you
did.
It.
Yeah,
yep.
and so he's in there playing with it, and that is how you learn is by I'm going to write this program, because if I have to write something really complicated, I don't have an ES set up yet. I have to go try it, and when you're downloading, and it doesn't work, like I put the wrong statement in, and immediately. Get done, the system goes up and this equation is now true, and it's doing it. So I dropped the program into one of the panels and a thing called out. And I'm like, dispatch calls me up and goes, man, the trucks are rolling. I'm like, what the hell do you mean the trucks are rolling? She goes, I don't know. They just called us, said there's a fire alarm there. And I'm looking on the network, and yeah, they're right. It's rolling. It says there's a fire alarm. And so within minutes, I'm back there looking at it going, now what the hell? And sure enough, Chris and I looked at the equation and went, well, yeah, when the conditions are normal, it's going to send the alarm. I wrote the wrong equation, and it's one word, just like any other basic language, it's a very powerful thing. Flipped it around, put the right word in there, dropped it back in. Oh, now it doesn't do it.
Now it works.
Yeah, now it works fine. And you can, it's never good to experiment while the fire department is being dealt with. Like, there are better ways to figure out
that.
your programming's wrong than having Engine 4 come up and beat you over the head with a wrench because they've got enough, they spent enough time up there. So
Sure.
Felt like a kind of an idiot. And then I sat back and I thought, well, I wonder how that happened. And then I turned around and dropped that same code back in the same panel on the download like 2 weeks later. And did the same damn thing. And I'm like, oh crap. Because you
well done.
Yeah. You're like, you changed the code here, but then you didn't save it correctly and then it reverted. And so I was like, those are the things that as a senior guy, you're like, I shouldn't be making these mistakes. And then you realize, well, this is pretty minor in comparison to the.
Well, let me fit you with the mind link, Mike. Then you will not make these mistakes. You will not ask questions. That's what we need to invent. We need to. If I could just write code, if it would just extrapolate from my brain what I want this thing to do. Yeah, if you could just access the internet with your brain and have the information stream directly from it into your fingertips.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Well, the new stuff that we've added, we've added this big radio network, and I've looked at how the code was written and then started to standardize it so that it's the same everywhere. Where it's not different in this building from that building from that building. If the code works here, it'll work there. And so for each instance, you can not copy and paste. You can hardly ever do that. But you can follow along with what you wrote there so that the next idiot who shows up to do work after me goes, well, this is the same programming that's here, that's here, that's here, that's here, that's standardized. We know it works because that's the way it should be done. You shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel every single time you work on something. Like if it worked here and it's the same panel,
sure,
and it's the same equipment, and that's what we wound up doing. We wound up writing some really cool stuff in a couple of our buildings that I just sat back and went, I'm glad that worked out the way I thought it would. It's like, I'm not losing my brains.
No, that'll have to be one of my projects.
Oh, I got it. You got to look at it, man.
A radio dialer.
It's really cool. And you can connect them, you can connect these radios to the serial DACT. You can connect it to the SDACT. And so for those who are not fire alarm people, it's basically a dialer. And it'll have all the codes for the contact ID codes, and then you just choose on the database what you want, which codes you want to send to the monitoring company. You define those codes to the monitoring company. So you could just plug in the phone lines and go from that. But if you have 6,000 points, I don't want all that crap being sent. That's a lot of that. I just want like a couple of codes sent. And that was, so it makes your life easy because all you really care about is, look, there's a fire here, roll the trucks. Like,
minimal information.
Minimal information. You don't need to know that it's in this bathroom on that floor. They don't give a damn.
What is it that Frankenstein's monster used to say? Fire bad.
Fire bad. Fire bad, come put out. It doesn't have to be that complicated. And now that we've approached it from that and taken out a lot of that excessive language and made it simple, it fires so fast, man. I mean, you make a mistake.
Can you cut down on the time, like during a dialer test, say? You can significantly cut down on. We
did that, and then we put a feedback loops through so that the inspectors can trip it and then watch the signal come up on the screen. And then because we use EM24 as our monitoring, and you can actually open up the app on your phone and see it go through. So you can put the system in test, and then you can watch the signals come through. And so the guys who I worked with at that company, they dialed in what we wanted. So for example, if the helipad has a problem, it tells them it's the helipad system. Like it's not just, FAG say fire on roof, call fire truck. It's like, no, this is a foam system that's been deployed. This could very well be an aircraft crash. Be
Yeah.
prepared for that. And then their operators say, yeah, this is a foam system that's been tripped. And so we can give that kind of resolution. And so my hope is, as I dial these things in and then get the city to understand that, we are reducing all those alarms, because we get a lot of false alarms. And a lot of the false alarms that happen because of legit reasons. I mean, we get people smoking in that one bathroom all the time. It's like, it drives us crazy.
It's like the law of probability. If you have 1 billion devices, then one of them's going to go into false alarm almost every day.
When you have that many buildings, you're going to have a false alarm somewhere. It's just going to happen.
Yeah. If it didn't go into alarm that's when I would start scratching my head. Like, probability is no longer operating as a factor. We are effed. Something is wrong.
Something isn't right. It's weird because you go through and as I listen to the radio traffic and do my work there, I'm just always expecting at any point, something's going to go wrong somewhere. A flood's going to happen, or
I'm back at work again.
Or you're back at work.
20% of my time now devoted to fire systems, and gosh, I'll roll the fire trucks, I promise.
I doubt it. I think it's good to have you back. I really do, and I'm super excited to have you back on the team doing work for us, because I liked what I saw. Other than that, I can't thank you enough for being here and just sitting down with me.
Sure, it's been fun.
Yeah,
I like it.
Try to make it very nice and relaxing. And for those of you who I haven't had on the podcast yet, I'm coming after you. So all of you out there, all of you are vulnerable. And if I haven't tapped you on the shoulder, it's not because I don't love you. I just haven't done it yet. So I'm coming. If you want to email us, tell us, halfwattpod, right, at gmail.com. Yep. First time I got it right. I got my thumbs up. Email us. Tell us what's going on. I got a couple emails to read, but I usually do those on roundtables. So be a part of this. This podcast is for electricians. It's not just for fire alarm electricians. We were talking to a couple telecom folks that are heavy telecom industry people. I want to bring them on next, and other stuff like that. So you got to be involved, folks. This podcast is for you.
Thanks for listening to the Half Watt Podcast. We always want to hear from you, and we encourage you to email us at halfwattpod@gmail.com with questions or even your own stories. Funny, crazy, or praiseworthy, we want to hear it all. You can follow us on Instagram at halfwattpod to stay up to date on our feed. And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And share us with a friend, the best way to help us grow. The Half Watt Podcast is a production of Now Hear This Studios.